Good day, goeiedag, fellow South Africans. And we had a cracker of a live stream earlier today. Fantastic discussion with Patrick, an amazing guy. And what I'm attaching here is a video where, and this is a shout out to several people who've drawn this to my attention. But in this video, an African guy explains to his fellow Africans why, the road South Africa is going right now is a road to chaos and disaster. And that includes the expropriation of land without compensation. Very interesting. This guy's actually got a lot of good ideas. And the beauty about a discussion like this is that he's actually talking in terms that a lot of his fellow Africans will relate to. And that's very, very important we get this message out there. All right, guys, please remember to subscribe to be kept informed, and have a great day. Bye for now.
The story I want to talk here is about the land reform or the land question in South Africa. South Africa will collapse within 6 months of South Africa taking the land in South Africa. Within exactly 6 months to a year, South Africa will collapse. As a nation, it will collapse. Completely it will collapse. A lot of black people find themselves pretty much Western Zimbabwe, Western the neighboring Zimbabwe. South Africa economy will collapse within 6 to 9 months of taking the land from white people. I'm telling you straight out that South Africa will collapse within 6 to 9 months of taking. The first thing which is going to be hit is black people will start losing jobs. Companies will start shutting down. Why I say that? Companies will start shutting down. Companies will start shutting down. Factories, companies, all this will start shutting down. The rand will start devaluation. Pretty much a loaf of bread will cost at least between maybe 3,000 or 4,000 rands. South Africa's finance man South Africa will find itself changing $1 pretty much 1:10 or 1:10, 1:10,000 or 1:20,000 rands. Most South Africans, one thing people don't understand is that most of the bulk of South African black people are not educated. South Africa has got the largest uneducated black people. In South Africa, black people who are at least between the age of 25 to 50 years in South Africa, most of that age group is not educated. Pretty much between 20 black people who are over the age of 25. Or at least I think between those black people in South Africa who are between the age of 25, these black people are pretty much the least educated population. Most black people in South Africa who we call adults, they grew up under the apartheid. So these are the most uneducated people. South African parliament is full of black people with no education at all. Most black people in South Africa have no idea how South Africa is going to collapse. South Africa is going to collapse within 6 or 9 months of taking land from white people. Here's why South Africa is going to collapse within 6 or 9 months of taking the land. It's because majority of South Africans are not aware how the economy is run. The South African rand which you see in South Africa, it was introduced by white people. Europeans introduced that rand. A lot of black people have no idea that money you call rand in South Africa is not black people. Black people didn't introduce that rand. White people who are there in South Africa introduced rand. They introduced the rand. They introduced the banks. They introduced the rand money. They put the value through trading with other countries. Black people in South Africa didn't introduce the rand. So the rand which many people in South Africa are earning as money, most black people in South Africa has no idea that that rand is white people who introduced that rand. It's not a black person's money. Europeans introduced that. White people in South Africa, who you see there in South Africa, introduced that rand. So they could easily collapse it if they choose to. Most black people, number two, most black people have no idea how the country is going to collapse. People who are running the economy of South Africa are white people. White people are the ones who are running the economy of South Africa. The remaining white population you see in South Africa are the ones who are actually, they're the ones who every black person is eating food there. Most black people have no idea that taking land, especially the land they're talking about, South Africa's land problem is a social housing structure that is building houses for people to live in the city center, not farms. The moment you take farms, here's what's going to happen. The moment, what is the purpose of farm? Number one, black people don't know what is the purpose of farms. The purpose of farm is to produce food for the cities, because people living in the cities, or what you call emayadin, people who live in the cities, Johannesburg, Pretoria, all these other cities in South Africa, Durban and all these other cities. Nobody farms in the city. Food comes from commercial farmers to feed people who live in the city, because people who live in the cities like doctors, lawyers, politicians, people living, they don't produce food for their own. You understand? So the purpose of a farmer is to produce food to feed the cities. You understand? A lot of black people have no idea where food is coming from in South Africa. They're not aware, a lot of black people in South Africa. They're going to collapse the nation like what happened in Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, the land issue was used as a political tool to keep a person who was called Robert Mugabe in power. Mostly, Robert Mugabe didn't want to take land from white people. He didn't want to take land from white people, but he was cornered because of the high corruption which has taken place in Zimbabwe. A lot of politicians in Zimbabwe were stealing money. They were stealing public coffers, the public money. Every minister in government was stealing government, so they looted the national income of the money of the country. They looted the national income of the money to the brink of collapse, and they had no any political tool to sustain themselves in the event of any political party rising against them. And so they knew that they had no one to blame for the collapse of the nation. It was them. So they started putting their finger on farmers, people who had nothing to do with the looting the government coffers. You understand it? This is what happened in Zimbabwe. This is why even after Robert Mugabe took land from white people, still people went against him, because they noticed that even despite giving land, the country had no income at all. They had looted every coffers of the government. You understand me? So people realized that the land was used, people pretty much to keep that man in power who had looted the government coffers. In South Africa has got the highest corruption. What you see in South Africa happening is the mismanagement of the resources of the state, leading to people getting defranchised. A lot of people in South Africa are not happy because they're not getting a fair share. The reason why you're not getting a fair share in South Africa is because the government, the ANC government, it has nothing to do with white people's land. A farmer, the purpose of a farm is to produce food. You can't blame a person who's farming chickens in South Africa, a farmer who's producing grapes, oranges and banana. Do you think taking land from a person who's producing bananas and apple is going to make you wealthy? No. The most complicated job is to be a farmer, because farmers deal with the drought. They need to produce food in a drought country. They need to produce food, and the purpose of them is to produce food for the cities. A lot of black people in South Africa have no idea. They think that if you take land from white people, you are going to be rich like a white person. You're not going to be rich like a white person. The moment you take land, you find yourself having to produce land you are never trained to do. Land is the most sophisticated thing to deal with. Land needs machines, equipment, which will cost hundreds and hundreds of billions. No black African leaders is going to supply a fund. Look at the rest of Africa. Look at the DRC. The DRC is bigger than South Africa. It has got more land than South Africa. Guess what? The entire land is a jungle. The entire country is full of jungles. You see, it's full of jungles. Remember, in South Africa and in Zimbabwe, black people didn't introduce farms. Africans had all forest with land, but land was full of animals. Land in Zimbabwe, South Africa, it was full of animals before Europeans came. Europeans introduced farming. They're the ones who started to make land to produce food. After noticing that Africans were hunter-gatherers, we were hunting animals, killing impalas and things of that nature, eating wildebeest and killing impalas for food. Africans didn't farm. No African person farmed in Africa. Nobody. Farming was introduced by white people. Black people they gathered fruits in the forest. Fruits which naturally grow in forests and eat. When Europeans realized you can't feed anyone like that, so they started designing cities, a place where people live, farms, a place where food is going to be produced. Because a lot of black people in Africa, they don't know that the purpose of a farmer is to produce food, to feed the city. In the city, that's where people buy lemons, guavas, oranges, mangoes. That's where you buy in the city. You don't take land from farmer. Look at America. South Africa has got over 35,000 farmers producing food, white farmers producing food for the cities. America's got less farmers than South Africa. America's got over 2,500 farmers. But all 2,500 farmers, they own 90% of the land. Why is that? Because everybody in America, 98% of the population of the United States lives in the city. They live in the city. Nobody lives in the rural areas. Just a few farmers, they own 90% of the land. Why is that? Because those few farmers who own 90% of they use land, they use machines to produce food. So they don't need anyone. Just a few farmers with the machines, they can produce enough food to feed the entire city in the United States. They don't need people there. So when you start taking land from real farmers, which are white people are the people who have been farming in South Africa for over 300 years. They've got the technology to farm. They know which seeds to farm. No African in South Africa know how to farm them. To farm, you need technology. Number one, you need to learn how to deal with soil management. You need to test which type of soil. This technology is not there for black people. South Africans are the least uneducated. They're the most uneducated people in Africa. Zimbabweans are much better educated than South Africa. But in Zimbabwe, the population, what is happening in Zimbabwe was a political situation. It had nothing to do with the land. This is why the new president called Mnangagwa today, he's not talking about land again. He's actually looking for white people to come back. He knows that back in the days when Robert Mugabe was in power, they were using land to remain in power. Now they know. Notice what is happening in Zimbabwe. They can't use the land again. They can't use that as a political tool because it's over. Most Zimbabweans know what they were doing. That land, even if you've got land, millions of people are still starving there. Zimbabwe needs millions of dollars still to keep its population fed from foreign donors. What happened to the land? Nobody's using that land. It has collapsed already. The people who were farming technology were actually white people. Without white people farming, most black people have left that land already. Some of them went to South Africa. They left that land. You see, it's a clear indication most Africans are not aware that if you are given a land, the first thing is going to come is money. Where are you going to get money? No banks is just going to hand over money to you. They'll still need to know, how are we going to get our money back? No bank is just going to give you 10 million American dollars to farm, to buy equipment, irrigation equipment, machines to till the land, combine harvesters. All these machines which cost $35 million each, $45 million each, $60 million each. Do you really think South Africa is going to hand over money? The ANC is going to hand over this type of money to an African black person with no technology, with no mind of farming? Farming is the most complicated job. It's the most complicated job to deal with land, because you need to deal with the land soil. You need to start studying each and every soil in South Africa before you don't just farm. You see, a land for maize, a place where you put maize or corn maize and bananas and grapes, all those lands need a different type of land. So you will need to test the land and see what type of soil is grown here. What type of soil can we grow certain type of seeds? In this technology, no South African knows anything. They don't know how to deal with the land. The white people can tell you this land is for grapes. This land, we tested it, this soil. It's not good for this type of crops. This type of soil needs sugarcane. This type of soil needs this. All that technology, white people have got them. They've been doing this for over 300 years. Currently in South Africa, there is no black person with technology to farm. Zero. A lot of Africans, this is why in the rural areas of South Africa, or not in the rural areas of Africa, only our grandfathers live in the rural areas with a few chickens, a little bit of cow, and what is they do? They do what we call subsistence farming. Subsistence farming means you farm, you produce food for yourself. You've got the cattle for milk, you produce maize or whatever, you produce vegetables, you farm and produce food for yourself. Commercial farm, which is what is happening in South Africa, a lot of black people going and attacking farmers who are producing. This is commercial farm. Commercial farm, that means production of food for the cities. You don't go there and what you see in South Africa, attacking white farmers and say, oh, we want the land, we want the land. All these people who are attacking white people, they don't know where they're eating. They don't know the food they're buying at home, that it's coming from those farms. They've no idea. They've no idea. This is why today you see Zimbabwe collapsed. Here's why Zimbabwe collapsed in Zimbabwe. White people who had land, they were the ones who owned factories to process food, to produce milk. Milk was coming from commercial farm, from white farmers. Milk was coming from white farmers. Sugar was coming from white farmers. Cooking oil was coming from white farmers, from sunflower. Milk, sugar, cooking oil, and all citrus fruits, mangoes, things like that, guavas, vegetables, everything was coming from white farmers. All this was coming to the factories. Again, the factories in the city, all of them were owned by white farmers. White farmers owned factory. So if you take land from farmers in South Africa, from a farmer, you are going to see millions of people losing jobs, because it's connected. A lot of black people have no idea that the land you take is producing food, is producing sugarcane or sugarcane. Then the sugarcane is to go to the city where it's going to be processed to produce sugar. So they take the sugarcane farm, and then the factory people who are in the city, those factories are going to close because there is no sugarcane coming to the factories in the city. So a lot of black people are going to lose jobs, and after lose jobs, they go in the streets. They go after losing jobs, they go in the street. And in the street, like in South Africa, where just imagine what's going to happen to South Africans. Most people, the black politicians in South Africa, nothing but very corrupt. The criminals. Look at South Africa. South Africa was one of the richest countries in Africa. 30 years ago, South Africa, one of the richest countries. Now it's almost a third world country. Crime is epidemic in South Africa. There's more, since the ANC took power, South Africa has got more crime in South Africa than the rest of Africa combined. More people die in South Africa than in war-torn African states, than in the DRC, Somalia, Nigeria, and think of it. All this didn't happen when white people were running South Africa. No. It didn't happen like that. Now, South Africa, look at the type of crime which is happening in South Africa. Just look at crime in South Africa. Over 350,000 people are murdered a year. Over 350,000. In Iraq and Afghanistan, that number is less than 5,000. Less than 5,000. And look at South Africa, over 350,000 annual. That means in 5 years, 1 million blacks dead. In 5 years in South Africa, 1 million. So think of it like, wait a minute, this never happened. And many people are scared of saying this. This is why I say black leaders don't trust black leaders. Black leaders have no idea how to run an economy. They don't know who introduced what. Europeans introduced South Africa. South Africa was built by Europeans. You understand me? They built electricity, roads, railway, buildings you see in South Africa. This is why South Africa is the only country which was much richer than a lot of African countries. It's because of white people there. Because of white people. That's why black people are benefiting from things they didn't build in South Africa. They didn't build those things. You understand? But they're benefiting. They have no idea that without white people there, the country will collapse straight into the drain. Straight into the drain. And how are they going to feed 50 million South Africans? Zimbabwe's got 10 million. 10 million. Very few Zimbabweans are there. But the country has collapsed. South Africa will be 10 times worse because we are 50 million. You can't go to Namibia. It's maybe 12 million. Botswana, maybe 2 or 3 million people there. So South Africa is the highest population there in the SADC region. So without white people there, where do you think South Africans are going to go? Where do you think black South Africans are going to go? To the sea. If they're starving, you think America is going to come and help? No, they'll never. Europe never. So they help South Africa. South Africans will be on their own. They'll be worse. They'll run to the sea there. They'll start eating each other and killing each other. They'll start shooting each other. Because you are, at the moment, currently, many people in South Africa have no idea who's producing their food. You go and ask a South African, where do you think the meat is coming from? The meat you are eating, everything eaten in South Africa is produced by white people. A lot of black people, including black politicians, have no idea. The money you are earning, the rand you are earning, white people introduced that. The white population you see in South Africa introduced the rand. It was never introduced by South Africa. This is why Zimbabwe collapsed. The dollar which was used in Zimbabwe didn't introduce that. Europeans introduced that. They introduced that. This is why it was easy for them to collapse it. They can collapse it if they want, because they can say, well, you black people introduce your own money, introduce on your money, and more black people would be like, oh my God, what are you going to introduce besides the rent? What are you going to introduce? Whatever you're going to introduce will be valueless. No one wants it. So you have to think a lot of South Africans are not educated. That's one point of South Africans are not educated people. They're different from Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, the political situation in Zimbabwe, they do things deliberately, but they knew they were doing wrong. They wanted to sort of like, it was a matter of political survival, not economic survival. If you want to do an economic survival, you do the right thing. Don't take land from South Africa. Don't take land from white people. The land which should be taken and used is the land in the cities for housing black people. The South Africa is suffering a housing crisis. Black people don't have houses. Poor black people don't have houses. So they don't know where to go. I went to South Africa. They live in squatter camps. A lot of black people. And who's to blame? The ANC. A lot of people, they don't know. The people to blame in South Africa is the ANC. Not white farmer. Not your white woman who's producing chickens. That's not the reason why you are suffering in South Africa. A person producing pigs or a person producing milk in the farming is the problem why you're poor? No, you're poor because of your government. So look at it in Zimbabwe. Zimbabweans today are poor, not because of any white people. In fact, when white people were producing food, Zimbabwe was producing almost 10 times more food than it needs. When white people stopped producing food, no one could. Nobody, no black person, not even a single. Go and ask the Zimbabwean there. Nobody produces food. When white people just stopped, like, okay, let's stop producing. Let these black people do it. Guess what? Not even a single black person can feed even less than 200 people. Zero. Nobody. Nobody. Everyone is a beggar now. Nobody. This is the thing which is going to happen to South Africa. Well, South Africans, I'm well aware. I know I went to South Africa now. 90% of black politicians have no idea what they're eating, where it's coming from. See, white people are just keeping quiet like this. They know, like, okay. They're just starting. Okay. If they want to, they can easily collapse the rand. And you see black people with the money in their banks, meaningless. Your money will be worthless in 6 months. It will be paper money. It will be useless. They can collapse it if they want to, because you didn't introduce it. They introduced it. The rand which you see in South Africa, it was introduced by white people. In Zimbabwe, we used a dollar. In Zimbabwe, there was a dollar there. But the dollar was not introduced by Robert Mugabe. It was introduced by the previous white people introduced it. The previous, before 1980. So Zimbabweans under Robert Mugabe continued to use the currency they didn't introduce. Like you see today in South Africa. You see, a lot of South Africans have no idea that once you cannot take land without knowing how to produce food. You can't just take land from white people, because guess what? Between any South African today, there is no South African person in South Africa who can produce more food than white people there. Nobody. Zero. Never. It's not going to happen. I don't care whether black people, you give them all the land, they will never produce even a quarter of what white people are producing. Black people, all of them, not only in South Africa, all black people in Africa will never produce enough food than white people in South Africa alone, combined. Not just black people in South Africa, black people in Africa combined cannot produce enough food more than white people in South Africa alone, combined. Because no black people in Africa, there's no black person with technology to produce food. They don't know that food, you need technology to produce. To farm, you need technology. You need farming equipment costing hundreds of billions of dollars. Farming machines, irrigation machines, and then you need the type of soil to produce food. Not every soil can produce food. Then you need the type of seeds to produce. All that technology, black people, they don't know anything. Black people know what, in the rural areas, you produce food or maize food for yourself. In the rural areas, we have got what you call subsistence farming. Subsistence farming, that means you produce your own food. That is what our grandmother does in the rural areas. No one produces food for the cities. The cities fed mostly by Europeans. White people are the ones who have been feeding the cities. They produce cities. This is why America has got 2,000 farmers. They're the ones who feed 400 million Americans. 2,000 farmers in the United States, they produce enough food to feed the United States and half of the world. But there are only 2,000 farmers. Why? Why is that? Because they own all the land. You see, you don't need to put people to live in the farms. No, one person should own half of the country. They just need money in the machines. You don't need 20,000 people in the digging. You don't see anyone. Go to United States and say you are not going to see anyone in the farm. It's all machines. It's all machines. This is why I say for a lot of South Africans have no idea that food is produced by machines. It's not produced by a human being digging, using your heart. Like, I'm tired. I'm digging. I want to put a maize. I'm tired. Who do you think you're going to feed like that? Who do you think you're going to feed? Europe. It's machines. You see what I'm saying? Europe. Who's feed people in Europe? Few farmers with machines. They've got irrigation machines. They've got technology to produce food in the rural areas. No one farms there. Very few farmers nowadays in Europe. But Europe has got over 500 million people. You look at the farmers, they're very few. Very few farmers. And they've got more land than everyone living in the city. Why is that? It's because you need more food to be produced by few people to feed more people. You don't need more people sitting in the farm. You see what I mean? You need very few people with more land. You don't need more people in the farm. No, you need more land with very few people to produce, because to produce food, you need a lot of land. Not more people in the farm. No, you need land, more land. Then the entire land will be crops, types of crops. That's why you need more land to produce food for the city. You don't need more people. A lot of black people in South Africa have no idea that once you take land from white people, I've noticed a lot of black people in South Africa taking land. Any place you are taking, it's going to collapse. And South Africa is going to be worse, I'm telling you. Because I can know this Cyril Ramaphosa is not educated. He's not a farmer. Cyril Ramaphosa doesn't know anything. He's the worst leader in South Africa there. Because one thing about Cyril Ramaphosa is that these black people in South Africa, they're using land as a political tool without knowing when we take land, who is going to produce food to feed us. Black people are not aware. I've noticed Cyril Ramaphosa talking about, we want to take land but food security. Be careful. If you are not producing your own food to feed yourself, don't take land from people who are producing food. If someone is producing food to feed you, be careful taking land after. In Zimbabwe, this is what they do. They took land from white people without knowing who was producing food for the city in Zimbabwe. Nobody knew where food was coming. The only black people knew that I can go to the market and buy mangoes and tomatoes, and I go to that market and buy food. They didn't know who was supplying food. And people who were supplying food were all white farmers around Zimbabwe, throughout the country in Zimbabwe. They were the ones who were producing food to feed food in Harare, in Bulawayo, in all the major cities in Zimbabwe. So when they took land, black people took land and say, okay, you black people go and stay there in the farm. So black people went in and stayed in the farm and put their hands like this. They didn't know that they have to produce food. They just went in and sit. I'm going to put my small house there. And then they were sitting in the farms like this. And then the country realized, what is food? How come the supermarkets have no food at all? And people say, well, all the farms which are around the city here, they're the ones which were supplying food to the city. So who's producing food there? The farmers, black people who were in the farmers now, they were both sitting. They didn't know where food was coming. They were both sitting in the farms. And people realized, people were started starving. Because the black people went into the farm and just sit. They didn't know how to use the machines, how to grow crops. They didn't know nothing. They had no technology of producing. This is why I say, if you give a black person farm without knowing, do they know how to produce food? They don't have the science here. A lot of black people, not only in South Africa, throughout Africa, they don't have the science to produce here. And farming is very complicated, because to be a farmer, an average black person in South Africa, to be a farmer, you need at least 65 million American dollars each. Do you think the ANC government is going to give you? To be a farmer, you will need $65 million. You need to prepare the soil, test the soil, prepare the soil, machines, irrigation, all these things. And you also need science to study the crops, the type of crops. You also need science, soil management. You don't just farm. You need to manage the soil to know whether the soil is good. And all that science is not good. Not even a single black South African farmer knows anything about that. I did agriculture myself when I was in Africa. I did agriculture, university level. That's why I know this, university level. You see, I did agro science, university level. So I'm well aware that South Africa is going to collapse. Within 2 years, South Africa is going to collapse. It's going to collapse 100%. All these South Africans, all these black people you see in South Africa, you are going to see them cry. You're going to see them within 2 years. They're going to beg, they're going to cry to their politics. They're going to cry, white people, come back. You're going to cry. I'm well aware. You're going to cry because I know what's going to happen. A lot of these black people in South Africa, they take land without knowing. Do your people know how to produce? Don't just take land. Go to any small land where black people have taken and see, are they producing anything? Zero. Any land which black people have taken in South Africa to the present day, they're producing nothing. It's collapsed. They take a land which is producing food, and 2 days later, no one is there. Black people abandon and leave. They abandon and go back to the city. You see, they abandon because blacks, a lot of black people are not aware how to produce food. They don't know. The only thing they know is that I go and buy food in the city there, I go and buy bananas, meat in the shop. Who's producing it? They don't know. They have no idea. A lot of black people have never known how to produce. White people have got the technology. They've been doing this for 300 years. And the private property must be kept. Me, I believe, I went to South African land. I noticed how land is good, and white people they have improved and developed land. It looks so beautiful. I was shocked at how beautiful land in the farming looks. And because white people are the ones managing it. They're the ones managing it. You go to the farmland in South Africa, you'd see how beautiful the land South African white people have made it. They've made it so beautiful. I mean, they've carved everything. They've designed it and made it very nice looking. You think a black person is going to maintain the land like that when they take over from white people? You think they're going to... Look at when black people take the land from white people. They don't know. A lot of Africans. I know them, Africans. I'm one of them. A lot of black people, they don't know. When I went to university, I did agro-science. And I studied these things in detail. And I've looked at black people. I was looking at my grandmother in the rural areas like, oh my God, black people, they know how to subsistence farming. They produce their own food in the rural areas. Okoko and Okulu, those our grandmothers and our grandfathers. The way they produce it, they've got a small kettle there, a small farm there. They produce their own food and eat what they produce. A little bit of meal, they eat there what they produce. That is what they know. Majority of black people. They don't know how to produce food in mass production. That means producing food to feed the cities. In the cities, people, they don't have farms there. Teachers, doctors, lawyers, nurses, soldiers, all these people who live in the cities. Who's going to feed them? You need to know where food is coming from. South Africa is going to collapse because South Africa doesn't need land, especially the commercial land from farm. You can't take commercial land in the farms. The land which South Africa is supposed to utilize is the land in the city to build houses for people who are landless. That is my goal. South Africa needs a social housing. The ANC government failed to produce houses to develop houses for the people. That is the policy South Africa is supposed to have. Land to provide houses for the people. That is the land South Africa needs. Not commercial, not land for food, not to take land which is producing food for the city. No, I don't agree with that. The moment, because I know that a black person is not going to produce food more than white people, I'm well aware of it. That's why I'm against this policy. You think of black people, you think, who in South Africa is going to produce food? How many Africans, how many South Africans, black people, can we trust to feed 5,000 people? Nobody. So who's feeding 50 million South Africans? White people. White people are the ones feeding, white farmers. So the moment you think, can a black person, this is what Cyril Ramaphosa must think, this South African ANC leader, he has to think, can a black person produce enough food to feed 5,000 people? No. No, not even one. No black person in Africa can produce any food to feed 5,000 people. No, not even a single one exists. Zero. 90% of food which you eat in South Africa, white people produce that. Through science and technology, white people produce that. Black people only know buying. They don't know where it's coming from. They only know buying. You see, historically, our people never get involved in science. We've never getting involved in producing food to feed the cities. No, we only know in rural areas. You farm a small plot and you produce food for yourself. That's what most black people know. So South Africa, I guarantee South Africa is going to collapse because a lot of South African population, South African black people, South African politicians are not educated. Look at Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela took power simply because, yes, I understand he was a warrior, he fought for people, blah, blah, blah. I understand that. Was he equipped to run South Africa? No. Because a lot of black people, they don't know, number one, You need science and technology to produce electricity. You need science and technology to produce clean water. You need science and technology to produce roads, railway, all these other things. White people are the ones who introduced it and are the ones running it. Clean water, you need chlorine, you need all these. Black people don't know anything about that. You see, they don't know anything. So if you take things from white people and take land from white people, when white people invested and developed these things, and you can't just come into someone who built a skyscraper up and just say it's yours. For what? You can't do that. You see, I don't agree with a lot of what they are happening in South Africa. South Africans are going to collapse because I'm well aware, because South Africans are not educated people. Black people are not. Look at South African parliament is. It's like a playground. Most of the black people are so stupid. Everything you see in South African parliament is like a joke, because it is led by a lot of white people look at it, they know that they were being wasted at that time. And look at the black South African people. Look at Cyril Ramaphosa. Look at the crime rate in South Africa. They can't even solve crime. Crime alone in South Africa is epidemic. It's epidemic. The corruption in crime. If a black leader like Cyril Ramaphosa cannot stop his crime alone, do you think you are going to stop crime when white people go? Those with technology are gone, and you are left with these black people who operate and work like baboons in South Africa. Do you think they're going to stop crime? When white people were in charge of South Africa, there was very little crime. Now crime is epidemic. Murderers, robberies, stabbings in South Africa, it's epidemic. South Africa was more like America. It was more like America 30 years ago. Now South Africa is more poor. It looks like Somalia. And who's in charge? They don't even know how to rule. Look at the Cyril Ramaphosa. They do nothing. Many people talk about South Africa. South Africa is not a democratic country. No, it's just a managed country. It's just a managed country. It's not a democratic. If it was democratic, all black people, South Africans, every black person, every white person would be voting for someone. But most South African, most white people, they don't vote, most of them, because they know it's just the ANC. It's just a monopoly government. In fact, they don't have real effective opposition people who people can really rely on. You see what I'm saying? Mostly South African ANC is just running by chance. They're just running by chance. Not only by chance, they're running a country by monopoly, and they don't have effective opposition party. The EFF, most of the EFF policies, I would say the EFF, I like the EFF, but most of the people in the EFF, including Julius Malema, they're not aware of their policies. They don't know that the South Africa is rich and wealthy like that because of white people's production. The government is taking taxes from companies, which most of these companies are white companies. That's one thing. Most black people, they have no idea that in South Africa, all the companies which are running South Africa are white owned. They're owned by white people. So if white people just stop and say, okay, let's stop our companies today, every black person will be on the street. This is why I say a lot of black people in South Africa are not aware. This is why Zimbabwe collapsed. Zimbabwe collapsed because every black person was working for white. Without no black person has got a farm there. There is no black person with a factory in Zimbabwe. No black person has got a factory, industry, no. Everything was owned and controlled by someone who's white. Everything in Zimbabwe. This is why it was easy to collapse. The moment black people took things from white people say, okay, let's shut down our companies and go. And guess what? 90% of people on the streets. No employment. Everybody was like, oh my God, who's going to employ us? All the politicians were left looking like this. Oh my God, we didn't know that white people were the ones who were running factories. We didn't know that white people were the ones who had businesses. We didn't know that all the politicians in Zimbabwe, they had no idea who is, like in South Africa, who owns mines? White people. Who owns diamond mines, gold mines, factories, all the mines in South Africa? White people are running them. If they close, is there any black person who knows how to run with the technology? Zero. The politicians will be like, we don't know. Maybe let's ask the Chinese. Some Chinese will come back to South Africa and do the same thing. Take the resources for themselves, pay bribes for some few corrupt politicians, and the rest of black people will be worse off. You see what I'm saying? I know it will be worse off. South Africa without white people, it will be worse than the DRC. It will be worse because black people in South Africa are not educated. They don't know who's employing who. All the black people who are employed in South Africa, majority of black people are employed They're employed by white people in white companies. Do black people have their own companies? No. Do black people have their own factories? No. Do black people have their own industries? No. The moment everything is no. So who's employing black people? White people. Whose companies are there? White people. Whose companies are running the industry, the electricity, the roads, and everything? White people. And everything which is run by a black person is government. And it's the most corrupt, because those who are running, they take the money, put it in their pockets. They don't invest in new technology or new trains or things of that. They don't do. This is why to privatize, and it's better these things are run privately, so that people will introduce new trains, new railway systems, new things like that. If it's under white people, not black people don't run nothing. They don't know how. They don't have money, they don't have technology. Most of them are corrupt criminals and things of that nature. Look at South Africa crime. Cyril Ramaphosa cannot solve crime in South Africa. Do you think they're going to solve the economy and the farms and the land? These things are major. Because once you take the land, you're going to affect everybody. You're going to affect the banks. You're going to affect everything. And many black people start crying when they collapse the money and rand start losing its value. You see what I'm saying? And a lot of black people, they don't know that. In South Africa, that's black people, they don't know how things are run. They don't know that if white people who are running farms, they also run factories which process food. They also run in the city. They also run. So if a farmer lost a farm, they're going to shut down the factories in the city. Thousands of black people will be on the streets. And if they go to Cyril Ramaphosa, employers, Cyril Ramaphosa is going to say, I don't have a factory. I don't have nothing to employ you. Go out on the street, then you start becoming criminals, stealing from each other's houses, stealing food from each other. South Africa is going to be worse, man. Zimbabwe is almost lucky because Zimbabweans don't have guns and they don't shoot each other more like what's happening in South Africa. More people are killed in South Africa than in Zimbabwe, than in the rest of Africa combined. And all the ANC government cannot solve it. They can't. Later, you can't even solve crime. Look at the crime in South Africa. The way they kill each other for nothing, for very small petty things in South Africa is the worst country in terms of crime. Much worse than any other African country. And these things never existed when white people were in charge. Never. At all. At all. This is why I say I never trust an African leader now. African leaders, they don't know how to rule the country. They don't know. A country is developed in South Africa. Look at a country is developed in South Africa. It's collapsing, going down. Countries like Uganda, Rwanda, countries which were not, almost countries which were in trouble 20, 30 years ago, that the countries which are developing better. Countries which were better because they were run by white people was Zimbabwe, South Africa, Namibia, and Botswana, the SADC region. These were the countries which were the best countries because white people were there. These were the best countries in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and close to 2000. These were the best nations to live. They were the most safest country. They were the most developed African country than the rest of Africa, including the DRC, the DRC, it was wars. Nigeria wars, Somalia, Kenya, Sudan, all North African countries, they were all full of wars. The SADC region was the safest and the most developed region of Africa. Today, guess what? It's the region which is collapsing now because of these African leaders. African leaders, they don't know how to house their people. They don't know that we need to produce houses for poor people, like it is in Europe. In Europe, the government build houses for poor people. Then they start housing them. In Africa, they say, "Sibonela, fend for yourself. Sibonela, just do for yourself, fend for yourself." So a lot of black people are on the streets. They don't know where to go, and they tell them, "Well, the reason why you are poor, it's a white farmer." What does a white farmer do? You understand me? What do they do? Because the job of a farmer is to produce food to feed the city. That is their job. No one can take land. Land is going to remain permanent there for hundreds of millions of years. Land cannot go anywhere. So you cannot go and take a land. Land cannot go anywhere. But a person who's producing food in the farmer, leave them alone. You don't go and say, wait, it's yours. Why, are you going to produce food for the city? No. So you just want to take a farmer and say it's yours. Are you going to produce and do the same thing that person is doing? I can't go and take a farmer from a white person who's producing mangoes. I don't want to produce mangoes. He produces mangoes, I go to buy a mango. That's all. The farm is going to remain there for years. Land doesn't go anywhere. Land doesn't go anywhere. It remains there for hundreds and billions of years. So what's the point of even taking a land? It's just a coward mentality which is going on in South Africa, because most black people there are uneducated, and the most corrupt governments, which is the ANC, is going to use that land because they're going to be cornered like next year during elections. They're going to use land as a way to stay in power, when in reality it's their corruption in South Africa. The corruption in South Africa, the money the government is looting and stealing, they're looting the country. Instead of taking the money they're looting and building houses for black people in the cities, building hospitals, schools, roads, houses for black people in the cities, that is what they need to concentrate on. Instead of that, they're just using, oh, let's take the farm. What are you going to do with the farm? Because the purpose of farms is to produce food for the city. It's just to produce food. That is the purpose of a farmer. Do you want to live in a farm? No, I don't want to live in a farm. I want to live in the city where there's clean water, electricity and things of that nature. Who wants to live in a farm? Because what is the purpose of a farm? It's a food production industry. The purpose of a farm is to produce food. Do you want to produce food? No. Do you want to produce sugar? No. Do you want to produce milk? No. I don't want to go and play with the cows in the rural areas or in the farm. I don't want to do that. This is why in America, nobody goes and lives in the farm. Everyone lives in the city. New York, California, Chicago, Los Angeles. People live in the city because the purpose of a farm is just to produce food. That is the purpose of a farm. It's not for people to live in the farm. No one lives in a farm with the chickens and the cows and like in the rural. Nobody lives like that. No one wants to live like that. People want to live in the city. This is why all over the world, look at China, people are developing cities because people want to live in the city where there's electricity, clean water, electricity, good roads and houses and things like that. In the rural areas, it's a bush. No one is going to put electricity in the bush there. That's why I say for South Africa is going to be in trouble. Watch, it's going to collapse. It's going to collapse 100% because a lot of black people are not aware how the country is run. A lot of black people, a lot of African leaders are good of using white people as a scapegoat. They fail their own economic policy. They fail. They don't know what to do. Cyril Ramaphosa doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to run South Africa. I can run South Africa 10 times better than Cyril Ramaphosa. The first thing they need to concentrate: stopping crime, build hospitals, schools, and start educating black people. Start training here and educating them. Hospitals, schools, houses for the people. That is where they need to concentrate on. Schools, hospitals, and building houses for the black people. That is where they need to concentrate, not to take a farm. Why are you taking a farmer for? Why are you taking land for the farmer for? What do you want to produce? Do you want to live there in the farm? Most black people who say, we want to take our land, they don't know what are you going to do with it. Taking a land doesn't mean anything. That's why black people are starving in the DRC, but they've got more land than South Africa. What are they doing with it? Nothing. Nobody's producing anything. Everybody's just standing like this. And you ask them, what are they eating? They eat animals in the forest, killing monkeys and baboons and things of that nature. Why are they not farming? Because they don't have the technology. They don't have the technology, they don't have the equipment, they don't have the farm equipment. They need to cut trees and things like that. It's too complicated and too expensive. It will cost hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions to even introduce a farm in the DRC. But the many black people, what are they doing? Why are they not producing anything? Because they don't have the science. You see what I'm saying? It's not only that if you've got land, you're going to be rich. You're not going to produce. Look, black people in South Africa, you're not going to produce land. You're not going to produce enough food to feed yourself. Once you take land, you're not going to produce more food than white people. You're not going to do that. There is no black South African person who can produce more food to feed the cities than white people there. Zero. So don't waste your time. There is no black person in Africa who can produce food to feed anything. Zero. That's why I'm saying to you, don't take land. Don't. Concentrate on building the land. Look at the land which the government has taken to white people. It's all collapsing. They're stealing, they're killing animals, they're killing. South Africa is going to run out of elephants, they're killing everything, they're killing rhinos. I mean, South Africans are cannibal. A lot of black people in South Africa are cannibal. Most of them, they don't think in the future. They just think, oh, let's take things from white people. You're not going to be rich. You are vandalizing. I've seen them vandalizing houses of white people, doing all these crazy things. Why are you doing things like that? I've looked at some pictures in South Africa. Black people attacking. Why are you attacking white people for? Attacking them and attacking the children. What is that supposed to mean? Attacking a child. Do you think you're going to be rich by attacking someone's child? It's ridiculous how these black South Africans, they're just the cannibals. It's like, that's the most uneducated people have never. What is it going to do to you? Do you think it's going to change your life? The people who are the most corrupt is the ANC. People who, if I was a South African person, the person who I would fight for is the corrupt ANC. Fight them, not a farmer who's producing food to feed you. No. Fight a corrupt politician. That is the person we need to fight. These corrupt people use white people, or that to blame. What were they doing in power since 1994? They've been looting the government, the money, the resources, the money to pay for schools, so that no one pays school fees. The money to build the houses, they don't. They take that money and put it in their pockets. And when black people are starving on the street, then they say, well, it's a farmer over there. What will a farmer do to black people there? What do they do? Because guess what? I look at Africa. Africa is bigger than America. Africa can't feed itself. 2,000 American farmers. 2,000 American farmers. They produce enough food to feed all America. And America is very rich. Food is very cheap. How come 2,000 farmers in America can feed 400 million Americans? 2,000 white farmers can feed 400 million Americans. Why? Because they've got machines, technology, all that. That's why. That's why you can find one farmer has got 10,000 farmers in America. One person who is a farmer has got 10,000 farms. This one is for producing pork. This farm is producing this. This farm is for producing chicken. This farm is for producing milk. This farm is for producing this. And when they produce that meat, they've got the technology to produce more food to supply the city. But only one farmer. Not everyone to go to the farm. No. You say, no. I learned about farming. I realized I was, okay. Because I did agroscience. And I went detailed to study. Then I realized, like, no wonder these white farmers are just a few. But they produce more food because they've got science, technology. They know how to produce food. They know how to produce it. They've got the science and the technology and the money and the resources. Black people in Africa, they don't have nothing like that. So even if they've got land, they don't know how to produce food, how to farm. How do they do this? They don't know anything. That's why in America you've got 2,000 farmers. In the United States, those 2,000 farmers, each farmer has got more than 5,000 land. 5,000 land. I've got the land over there. I've got land over there. I've got 300 farms. I've got 700 farms. One farmer. And ask them, how do you farm but you live alone? They've got machines. Machines farm, machines do everything. Even today they use computers. Machines do everything. They irrigate through the machine, they harvest with the machine, they irrigate, they plant with the machine. A person on the computer. Person will be doing that on the computer. They don't even go to the farms. They do it on the computer. The machines do it on their own. Machines plant seeds on their own, harvest on their own, bring food on their own, bring all the produce to the storage on their own. So they don't need anyone in the farm. They don't. Everything is mechanical. It's technology now. And if you look at South Africa, people still talk about land. Now, you don't know where the world is going. South Africans don't take land. The country is going to collapse. I'm just telling you straight out. What happened in Zimbabwe was a mistake. Robert Mugabe didn't take land even in 1980. And the country was very rich. 1980. 1985, Zimbabwe was very rich. 1999, he didn't take land. After when he lost power, he started talking about how he should have never taken land. Robert Mugabe was talking about he should have never taken land, but it was too late. Too late. They did these things to gain political gains. You see, they know they're never supposed to take land, but they did it to gain a political step forward. That's why I'm saying to South Africa, the moment you take land, that country is going to collapse. Straight out, it's going to collapse. It's going to be worse than Zimbabwe. That's my warning to South Africans. Most South Africans, the one thing I worry about South Africa is that South Africa has got the highest uneducated black population. Most black people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s in South Africa, they were never educated by the apartheid government, so they are not educated. They're like children there. South Africans. I learned about South Africans. I studied them. They're not educated. South Africans are not educated. They're cannibals. Most black people there are not educated. If I look at a South African person, I'm like, God damn it, they're not educated. Their behavior is more like a baboon. A person is like a baboon. That's why it's easy for them to kill one another. They kill one another in South Africa, more than I've ever thought. I didn't know they kill one another like that. And the way they kill one another is epidemic. It's so shocking. the rape there, it's so shocking. If you look at South Africa, the behaviors of what you see in South Africa is supposed not to happen in a country as rich, as developed like that. It's something which is supposed to happen in the DRC, Somalia, or Rwanda, countries which are less developed. But if you look at what's happening in South Africa, you are like, how can things like this happen in a country as rich, as developed as South Africa? It's because the black populations are not educated here. The black population, not only the white, the black population have never been educated since the apartheid. We never educated them, and then now the ANC never educated them. So most black people, they're like cannibals, completely like, pretty much like baboons. A lot of them, including South African politicians in parliament, the way they behave, that speaker doesn't know anything. Oh, point of order, point of order, point of order, point of order. They know nothing. They were just put in power simply because they were black. White people just feel sorry for them and just, okay, let's put some of these black people in power as politicians. But most of them are not educated. They're wasting of time. Wasting of time, pretty much. If I'm looking at them, I feel sick just to look at the South African politicians in parliament. The black politicians, that just are not educated at all. I feel sick when I'm looking at them like these people. They needed a school, man. Okay, bye-bye. Just anyone who need a comment, just say a comment on this, subscribe and put a comment, and we'll go further. Cheers.